and welcome back to Book and Page. We are nearing the end of Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. Hey! You know all that stuff that we found out pretty quickly is probably true last section, if not the beginning of this play? It turns out it's true! Whoops. Okay, so as always, we will do a quick summary of what happened in this section before we get to some talking points. So, we start the scene with Jocasta coming out with some garlands because she is off to pray at the temple of the different gods, starting with Apollo, with the hopes that, you know, maybe he'll stop the plague so Oedipus can calm down. Because it turns out Oedipus is real concerned he might have messed up somewhere along the lines. But Jocasta, unfortunately, is interrupted by a messenger from Corinth, which is where Oedipus actually grew up, if we remember correctly, and fled with this concern that he would kill his father and marry his mother. Messenger's here to be like, yay! Old king of Corinth is dead, and Oedipus will soon be king. And Jocasta's like, yay! Oedipus, come out and hear about this. Because you didn't kill your father. It turns out he died, like, of old age. And maybe sickness. But it wasn't you. You didn't murder your father. It's fine. It's fine. But Oedipus is still concerned because there's, you know, this second half of the prophecy which says that he'll sleep with his mother. So until she's dead too, he's not going over there. Number one son, right? But the messenger's got a solution to this problem. Turns out, the Corinthian royal family ain't your family. Yep, you had no blood relation to that dude. He wasn't the dude you were gonna murder. If you sleep with the old queen now, it's fine. She's not your mom. What? Well, it turns out, with particularly good luck, that this particular messenger happened to have found Oedipus as a baby. And goes on to explain that he was looking after some herds, well, one herd, really, and met with this other shepherd who happened to have found a baby with his ankles pierced, and gave the baby to this messenger to raise as his own. And the messenger decided, better plan, let's give it to the childless king and queen of Corinth, which is what he did. Ta-da! And luck continues to hold. It turns out the shepherd that handed the baby over to this messenger is in fact the same guy they're already sending for. So he'll be able to explain things better. We figured this out, and in fact Jocasta has also figured this out. So she tries several times to tell Oedipus to, slow your roll, we don't want to know, we don't want to know. And Oedipus is like, I want to know! And Jocasta flees in horror. She's gone. Like, she just goes running off in terror, weeping. Because she has figured out exactly what's happened, and it's not good. So, Jocasta's gone, and the chorus decides to sing a song about this mysterious question of parentage. That, like, how have you not figured this out yet? It takes the herdsman coming in, the herdsman comes in, and the messenger's like, yeah, I know this guy, we worked together for years. And the herdsman is like, you need to shut up real soon. Just stop talking. And I'm not gonna talk. And he doesn't, until Oedipus forces him with violence, because that's always the answer. And it turns out, oops, patricide, regicide, and incest. Yay! Yep, so in this section we do in fact get it confirmed that Oedipus, abandoned as a child, is picked up, brought to Corinth, hears this prophecy, attempts to flee Corinth to prevent the prophecy, effectively kills his father in that process, arrives at Thebes, frees them from the Sphinx, and since their king is dead, marries their previous queen, who is in fact his mother, and has several children with her. Yay! Yay! And so the chorus succinctly sort of summarizes that as at the end. When they are like the only ones on stage, literally everybody else just books it. Oedipus is off, Jocasta is off. Like the messenger and the herdsman are just like, we're just gonna go. Like that poor messenger just must be like, I have walked in on something far bigger than myself. Should have listened to that herdsman when he told me to stop talking. So, we sort of did talk about this outcome prior to this point because as an audience you really are expected to sort of have figured it out because it's a tragedy. Like, how good's a tragedy if it's just like, oh hey, I found the murderer. It was this random highwayman. Okay, cool, the plague solved. Like, you know from the beginning, you're just waiting for the characters to figure it out. And this is a weird place for them to have done it. We still, of course, have some of the aftermath in this last section coming up. But it's sort of this weird, trippy nature to figuring out, for Oedipus at least, because Jocasta gets the first half and is like, nope, and is gone. But it takes Oedipus even longer. And it's sort of interesting because if you track the conversation, there's another strange theme that's joined this word and action theme. You can trace that all the way through. But I really noticed in this scene, starting with that messenger in the beginning, that we've got this weird confusion between what should make someone sorrowful and somebody joyful, right? Because we have this messenger who comes in and is just like, I have great news! The man you thought was your father is dead, and you're gonna be king. That's not good news. I'm sure, maybe the kingship is good news, but let's start with the man you thought was your father is dead. Maybe that should be the emotional beat we need to hit at the beginning. Maybe we shouldn't come in with great news. Maybe we should come in with, I'm sorry to have to be the one to tell you this, but your dad's dead. It's sort of like if you told somebody that serious information over text. Like, it's just this weird sort of casual reference to your dad dying. It's just like, could you pick up milk? Also, your dad's dead. Like, it's this weird thing because sorrow should be that emotional beat, right? Like, your dad is dead. But the messenger hits the beat as if it's good news, because you're going to be king of Corinth. And from there, the emotional sense of the scene, with how the characters are viewing it, is never, like, properly aligned. As audience members, of course, this becomes this sad scene as you're watching these people start figuring this out and start falling apart because of it, right? And going to different lengths to find out the truth, even though it's a really terrible truth. So for us, it should probably be sad and upsetting. But it should also be unsettling simply because these characters aren't responding to things correctly. Like, again, the emotional beats that these characters should be hitting just aren't landing. And that starts with the messenger coming in with, great news! King of Corinth is dead. You're gonna be king. And he makes reference to that because he's just like, yeah, it's exciting news. Might make you a little sad, but it's exciting news. And you're just like, you've hit the nail on the head there, with the recognition that, like, there should be this other emotion you're feeling, but it's probably not going to win out. And that gets, like, even more complicated as you go through the characters experiencing this confusion between joy and sorrow. Because the messenger says you should be happy because you're going to be king, maybe a little sad because the previous king's dead. But let's focus on the happy. And then Jocasta takes those two pieces of information and says, happiness is certainly what I'm going for, because the king is dead. Why is she happy that the king of Corinth is dead? Well, she's happy for Oedipus because Oedipus is now free of this prophecy that says he's going to kill his father, who everyone at this point is still assuming for some reason is the king of Corinth. So you can recognize there's a reason there for it, but that's still not the emotional beat you'd think people should be hitting. You're still gonna go for the fact that, like, Oedipus's father is dead. That should be sad. But it becomes this really joyful moment because, thank God, we beat it! Woo! Woo! Oedipus, you didn't kill your father. He died naturally. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? No, that's not super great. I mean, somebody is still dead and seems to be, he wasn't a bad person. He seemed to honestly take care of Oedipus from the few hints we get. Right? He wanted to consider Oedipus his own, so when that person at the party mentioned that Oedipus might be adopted, there was a hard smackdown, because he treats Oedipus like his own family. This should be a sad moment for these people, and suddenly they're just like, oh, thank God, I didn't do it, I did not do that. Oh my God, wait, I still might sleep with my mother. And that's the switch again, right? So we get, hey, you should be happy because you're going to be king. Actually, I'm happy because the man is dead, and I didn't do it. And then we get the switch to sorrow again because, wait, my mom isn't dead. You see what I mean? Like, as you're going through, you think, okay, we're sad that dad is dead, but we're happy because mom's still alive. We'll get to see her because we'll be king. Except that's not what's happening. Be happy you're going to be king. Actually, I'm happy because the king of Corinth is dead. I'm now sad and scared because the queen of Corinth isn't dead yet. I hope you're uncomfortable right now. Like, I really hope you are hitting the emotional beats that these characters are missing. Or at least are just like, why are they missing them so badly? And that's one of the big questions. Like, what has actually occurred at this point that means these people can't communicate well on an emotional level? That we're suddenly having so many mix-ups between joy and sorrow that, like, to the outsider, they're just like, what is wrong with you? But it also gives us a sense of just what these prophecies have done to these people, right? Oedipus has been living under the assumption that he will eventually kill his father and sleep with his mother for such a long part of his life that deeply affects him. He is deeply, deeply afraid of this becoming true, to the point where he seems to be afraid of the Queen of Corinth, who he assumes is his mother. And Jocasta says, well, you don't have to be afraid of the prophecy anymore. Your father's dead. And Oedipus says, well, I'm not afraid of him. I'm afraid of the living. I am afraid of my mother and this action. So we get the sense this is sort of the extraordinary part of all of this, because he's been living under this prophecy so long, and Jocasta's been living under a surprisingly similar one that they just haven't figured out is probably the same prophecy about her son killing her husband and then sleeping with her. She too is going to be affected by this. So, is the emotional turmoil here occurring because of the long-term effects of these prophecies? You really sort of want to be able to say this. You want to say, oh yeah, no, this is the extraordinary circumstances affecting them here. But then Jocasta cuts our ankles out from under us, because she makes some references that seem to imply that these missed emotional beats and the actions that correspond to them are normal for humans. And she picks probably the weirdest and most uncomfortable part to say is normal, which is Oedipus sleeping with his mother. Because when Oedipus admits that he's afraid that this is a thing that will occur, Jocasta says it's fine. Many men dream of sleeping with their mother. So, are these confused emotions normal, right? Because that's, again, a switch between sorrow and joy. You should be like Oedipus. You should not want to sleep with your mother. But then, many men dream of it, so it becomes a joyful occasion to dream about. And suddenly, the prophecies aren't the things that have pushed these people to these emotional points. Jocasta is quite directly saying that these emotional beats that they're missing are normal for humans. Oedipus doesn't have this concern because the prophecy told him it will happen. Oedipus has this concern because it's normal for men to want to do this. Really, this is the section that Sigmund Freud is looking at, right? Not Oedipus literally fleeing his city to avoid this outcome, but Jocasta saying that the desire, even the unconscious desire, is normal. And then it starts to make you wonder then, how many times have you yourself gotten these emotions confused? How many times have you been happy about something that should actually make you sad? And how many times have you been sad about things that could probably make you happy? But how do you also tell what you should be feeling? We can look at it and say Jocasta should be sad because a man is dead. But she's also looking at the fact that her husband should be freed of a burden because of that man's death. And why wouldn't she be happy because of that? Oedipus is scared that he might be attracted in some terrible way to his own mother. And again, Jocasta steps in and says, that's normal. I mean, she doesn't say it's normal for people that do it. She says it's relatively normal to have that desire and dream about it. But that becomes the issue, right? Because we've already stated within this play that words and actions are deeply and desperately connected. And suddenly, as you're watching this play happen, you have this realization that all of this is going downhill really quickly, and no one's sure how they should actually be feeling about each step that gets them closer to this disaster. It's weird, because Jocasta starts very happy, and then by the end of her section of the scene, she's absolutely horrified because she's just had the truth slapped in her face that she wanted to be happy about this, but she can't, because it's not the Corinth royal family that is at fault. It's her own. And that's never going to be a comfortable thing. To go along with that confusion in emotion, we actually have sort of an interesting little tidbit that lets us take a closer look at Oedipus specifically, and that's actually the meaning of his name. So, before the full reveal of, patricide, regicide, and incest, the messenger explains finding Oedipus with his ankles pierced and tied together. And he gives us these lines: "I loosed you, the tendons of your feet were pierced and fettered, so from this you're called your present name." And that's actually how we find out that Oedipus actually translates to swollen feet or swollen foot. And that's directly in reference to this fettering that occurred when he was a baby, that this man found him with. So you get sort of this physical manifestation of Oedipus's name, but again, to go along with just this track that all of these people have been brought on, Oedipus as swollen foot or feet makes a lot of sense, because he's got this name from his entrapment and thus carries the entrapment with him throughout his life, both in his name, which he's kept this entire time, and in the fact that he can't escape this fate. This prophecy has followed him this entire way, no matter he or anyone else tried to escape it. And in fact, the name has even more meaning in this particular scene to go along with that inability to escape. There are several points, first with Jocasta when she figures things out, and then with the herdsmen who had figured things out quite a bit sooner than all this and tried to piece out, telling him not to go down this road. The issue suddenly is that Oedipus, in fact, is unable to walk away. He's effectively fettered to the point where he has to admit the truth. He has to see the truth for what it is and see himself for what he is and what he's done. So Oedipus, in his very name and fate, is stuck. He cannot move. But how should we feel about that? Well, sorrowful certainly is an option here, because this is a tragedy. We are supposed to be upset about this. But I think you, in many ways, can also feel angry about it, because Oedipus didn't have options. At least he didn't seem to. He actively tried to avoid killing his father and marrying his mother. But because people did not give him the correct information about who those people actually were, he was prevented from achieving that goal. He was actually in a lot of ways pushed into it. And it suddenly becomes a question for us of, if Oedipus can be blamed for something that he did completely unknowingly, how fair is that? Should we actually be happy that Oedipus is getting what he deserves for these sins as they were? Because that's what the gods are saying, that Thebes has to suffer until Oedipus does. But how fair is it? Did Oedipus ever have a choice beyond this point to avoid all this? And if not, then why is he still culpable? Are we supposed to be joyful or sorrowful right now? Well, the issue is that we're not at the end yet. Everything's been revealed, but we have to deal with what's actually happened before we can finish off the story. So next video we'll be looking at the end of the play, and unfortunately what actually occurs to poor Oedipus and his mother-wife, Jocasta. Could they have stopped? I don't know. I'm going to keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.